An invasive species in the Florida Everglades is threatening the area's sprawling ecosystem.
Investigators wore hazmat suits and respirator masks as they removed hundreds of living and dead snakes.
Beneath the soil of America's most famous wetland lies a secret no one was meant to find. In the shadowed channels of the Everglades, researchers stumbled upon death unlike anything recorded before.
Marine biologists investigating a mysterious death inside Everglades National Park.
Creatures perfectly adapted to this swamp, found lifeless, mouths frozen open, bodies untouched. What could strike without teeth or venom? And why had it gone unnoticed for so long? When scientists finally examined these animals, the truth was horrifying. Their lungs were stuffed with parasitic invaders, an invisible plague spreading faster than the predators that brought it, a silent extinction unfolding in real time. But the swamp isn't just dying, it's fighting back. Could a long-lost species, thought extinct, rise to reclaim its place and turn the tide? This is more than a story about survival. It's a hidden war beneath the waterline. And what happens next could decide the fate of one of the world's most unique ecosystems. The empty forest. You know that sound of a healthy forest at night? The chirping of insects, the rustle of small mammals through undergrowth, the distant calls of owls, the constant hum of life that tells you an ecosystem is alive and thriving. Step into the southern Everglades tonight, and you won't hear any of that. Instead, you hear the wind brushing through sawgrass, the slap of water against your airboat, and then nothing. Absolute silence. Heavy, unnatural, the kind that makes you hold your breath without realizing it. That silence is the first sign that something has gone catastrophically wrong in America's river of grass. For years, researchers pulled SD cards from trail cameras stationed deep in the Everglades. These cameras were meant to track biodiversity: raccoons, opossums, bobcats, marsh rabbits, deer. Footage that should have teemed with life instead showed emptiness, hours of waving grass, shifting shadows, and no eyes glinting in the night. Frame after frame, the swamp looked like a landscape filmed on the moon. The data that eventually leaked revealed what words struggled to capture. The southern Everglades had been effectively sterilized. Mammal populations were collapsing at impossible rates. Raccoons down 99.3%, opossums 98.9%, bobcats 87%, and other species nearly wiped out entirely. Everyone assumed the culprit was the Burmese python. After all, a 20-foot predator consuming its body weight every few weeks could explain rapid declines.
Burmese pythons are one of the largest snakes in the world.
But researchers on the ground noticed something the math didn't account for. Even with an estimated 300,000 pythons, the speed of collapse was too extreme. Predators rarely drive prey to near total extinction, because when prey disappears, predator numbers crash too. But here, prey vanished faster than the pythons could possibly eat them. Something else was at work. New footage from the northern edge of the invasion zone revealed the missing piece: fear. The remaining animals weren't just being eaten, they were paralyzed by terror. Raccoons that once foraged boldly froze for hours, unwilling to risk movement. Rabbits stopped breeding, their reproductive systems shut down by stress hormones. Entire populations withdrew underground, slowly starving rather than risk exposure to predators that might be waiting in every shadow. The pythons had created a landscape of fear so intense that it was killing wildlife even when no snake was nearby. But the silence was only the opening act. Cameras eventually captured movement in the empty swamp. Native snakes, once resilient and thriving, began dying in numbers that couldn't be explained by predation. Something invisible, something far more horrifying than a giant constrictor, had arrived. A parasite, a plague, a hidden predator spreading through the lungs of native snakes, consuming them from the inside out. The invisible monster had arrived, and it was already everywhere, silent, unstoppable, and reshaping the Everglades in ways no one had anticipated. The swamp had fallen into quiet, but that quiet was a warning. And what emerged next would reveal that the true horror lurking in the Everglades was not what you could see. It was what you couldn't. Patient Zero. To understand the nightmare unfolding in the Everglades today, we have to rewind to one chaotic night in August 1992. South Florida had never experienced anything like it. Hurricane Andrew barreled through with winds reaching 165 miles per hour and a storm surge that climbed 17 feet.
Hurricane Andrew made landfall 33 years ago today, back in 1992. It remains one of the most destructive hurricanes in U.S. history, with winds of up to 157 miles per hour and a 17-foot storm surge.
Entire neighborhoods were obliterated. Trailer parks were shredded into aluminum confetti scattered across miles of leveled streets. Insurance companies went bankrupt. The National Guard patrolled empty neighborhoods, trying to prevent looting in a place where homes no longer existed. And amid the human devastation, lives were lost, and the cost was measured in billions. But while people were hiding in bathtubs and closets, praying for sunrise, another disaster was quietly unfolding at the edges of the wetlands. A reptile breeding facility, a warehouse full of exotic pets destined for terrariums and pet shops, took a direct hit. Roofs peeled back, cages shattered, and hundreds of baby Burmese pythons were released into the storm. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Floodwaters carried them into canals, winds pushed them into tree islands, and they found themselves in a warm, wet paradise brimming with prey. The hurricane is the convenient story. It's dramatic, easy to repeat, easy to point to as the start of the python invasion. But the truth is darker. Throughout the 1990s, the exotic pet trade was booming. You could buy a baby Burmese python for $10 at a flea market. Cute, manageable, and undeniably cool. They were the must-have pet. But Burmese pythons don't stay cute. In a year, they outgrow their tanks. In 2 years, they are 8 feet long, muscular, and capable of killing household pets.
20 feet long. The invasive species can kill pets and children.
By year 3, they become full-fledged predators demanding specialized care few can provide. So what did owners do? They released them into the Everglades, thinking they were giving them freedom. In reality, they were igniting a biological time bomb. The Everglades, with its warm water, endless hiding spots, and abundant prey, was essentially identical to the python's native habitat in Southeast Asia, with one catastrophic difference. Florida's wildlife had never seen Burmese pythons before. Rabbits, raccoons, even alligators had no instinct to recognize this predator. The pythons began eating relentlessly. They bred rapidly. A single female lays up to 100 eggs at a time. One snake became 100.
Female Burmese pythons can lay up to 100 eggs. The mother remains in the nest.
Those hundreds became thousands. 20 years of hunting, trapping, and government intervention barely slowed them. Python challenges, professional hunters, GPS-tracked Judas snakes. Every tactic helped only a little. The population exploded in secret. But the snakes had a secret weapon nobody noticed. While attention was on their size, their appetite, their sheer destructiveness. The pythons were carrying an invisible plague, a hitchhiker in their lungs, waiting for the perfect moment to spread. What seemed like a visible invasion was just the opening act. The real disaster was biological, silent, and far more devastating than anyone had imagined. The invisible plague. This is where the story of the Everglades transforms from an environmental disaster into something that feels almost like biological horror. For years, field researchers had been walking the swamp trails, checking camera traps, and recording data as part of routine surveys. But over time, something strange started happening. Native snakes, Pygmy rattlesnakes, ribbon snakes, small survivors that had thrived in these wetlands for millions of years, were showing up dead on the paths. They weren't crushed, bitten, or injured in any visible way. They were simply gone, frozen in positions that suggested a desperate struggle for air, mouths gaping, necks stretched upward in their final, futile breaths. At first it was baffling. No predator attack, no evidence of trauma, just sudden, inexplicable death. But when the researchers brought these snakes back to the lab and performed necropsies, the room went silent. The lungs of these tiny reptiles, which should have been pink and healthy, were instead stuffed with parasitic worms, dozens, sometimes hundreds, writhing inside a mass of blood and destroyed tissue. The parasites weren't just present, they were eating the snakes alive, devouring lung tissue until the animals could no longer breathe. Every infection was essentially a death sentence. The culprit was Rileyetiella orientalis, a lungworm native to Southeast Asia. It had evolved alongside the Burmese python over millions of years, and here's the terrifying twist. The pythons are completely immune. They carry the parasite, spread its eggs everywhere, and yet suffer no ill effects. Essentially, the pythons act as living delivery systems, seeding the swamp with a plague that has no natural check, until it hits the native snakes, which have no immunity. Once infected, a pygmy rattlesnake, garter snake, or corn snake is helpless. The worms migrate through the body cavity, settle in the lungs, feed on tissue, reproduce, and start the cycle anew. Every infected snake becomes a new source of contamination. Every python dropping is a biological landmine. The final stages of the infection are horrific. Footage shows snakes stretching toward the sky, gasping for oxygen as their lungs clog with parasites. Their movements slow, their breathing becomes labored, and in some cases the worms actually emerge from the snake's mouth, leaving a host they have already killed. The transmission cycle is frighteningly efficient. Eggs leave the python in feces, are eaten by cockroaches or beetles, which are then consumed by frogs, which are then eaten by native snakes. The larvae burrow through the snake's stomach wall, migrate through the body, and settle in the lungs. The cycle repeats endlessly, with no way for the native snakes to defend themselves. Even more alarming, the parasite no longer depends solely on the python. While the giant snakes remain largely limited to South Florida due to cold weather, the lungworm can survive and spread on its own through native hosts. It has already been detected hundreds of miles from the python population, as far north as Jacksonville. In effect, the biological fire has been lit independently of its original carrier, and even if the pythons disappeared tomorrow, the parasite would continue its deadly march. Amid the devastation, researchers noticed one anomaly. The cottonmouth, also known as the water moccasin, seemed to be surviving infections that killed other snake species outright. Could these aggressive, venomous snakes be nature's chosen survivors, tough enough to endure the plague? Or were they merely postponing the inevitable, holding the line while other species fell? The answers remained unclear, but the observation gave scientists a sliver of hope in a swamp overrun by parasites and invasive predators. As the lungworm spread and native species suffered, state officials began considering a drastic countermeasure. If the Everglades bad guys had a giant snake-spreading disease, perhaps the good guys needed a hero of their own. It was time to bring back the king. The stage was set for a battle not just of survival, but of evolution, strategy, and sheer biological force, a fight that would determine the fate of one of the world's most unique ecosystems. The swamp had become a battlefield, and the war was only beginning. The return of the emperor. Sometimes, when an ecosystem is collapsing and every conventional effort has failed, the only option left is one that sounds completely insane. In the Everglades, scientists and wildlife managers made a decision that shocked even seasoned conservationists: release more snakes into the wild. But these weren't just any snakes. They were bringing back a legend, the eastern indigo snake, the emperor of the American forest. If you've never seen an indigo in the wild, imagine a creature forged from gunmetal and midnight oil. They are the longest native snakes in North America, reaching nearly 9 feet.
This intimidating reptile is the heaviest snake in the world and one of the largest.
With scales that shimmer in iridescent blue-black hues, catching the light like spilled gasoline on wet pavement. They move through the forest with a quiet authority. Everything else gives way. But it's not just their size or beauty that makes them remarkable. Their diet is laser-focused. They eat other snakes, rattlesnakes, copperheads, cottonmouths, and they are completely immune to the venom of American pit vipers, a biological superpower that allows them to hunt prey that could kill almost any other predator. Unlike constrictors, indigos do not strangle their meals. They seize and consume with a jaw strength so formidable there is no negotiation, no escape. They are apex predators in the truest sense. The tragedy, of course, is that the indigo had disappeared from North Florida decades ago. Habitat destruction, sprawling development, and highways fragmenting populations had driven them from their ancestral lands. Fearful humans had killed them without understanding their role as a keystone predator. By the late 20th century, the emperor had been dethroned, lost to the forest. In response, a coalition of zoos, wildlife agencies, and conservation groups launched a breeding and reintroduction program. For years, they raised indigo snakes in captivity, carefully planning a strategy to restore them to the wild. Every detail mattered: habitat selection, genetic diversity, and timing of releases. The goal was not just survival, it was re-establishing a functioning apex predator in a fragile ecosystem. Finally, the moment arrived in the Apalachicola Bluffs, a stretch of old-growth longleaf pine forest in the Florida Panhandle. Far from the python-infested swamps of South Florida, trucks rolled into the preserve, carrying the precious cargo. Volunteers ventured deep into the forest, pillowcases in hand, each containing a future guardian of the ecosystem. One by one, the snakes were released. Watching the footage is mesmerizing. Each indigo emerged cautiously from its bag, tasting the air with its tongue, then sliding into gopher-tortoise burrows, their natural fortresses. These underground chambers provide protection from predators, regulate temperature extremes, and offer a place to rest. Observing captive-raised snakes instinctively seeking the right habitat is like watching memory encoded in DNA unfold, a living testament to the power of nature and the importance of conservation. For years, the question remained: would the program succeed? Captive-raised animals often fail to survive in the wild, starving, succumbing to predators, or failing to reproduce. But then, late last year, a trail camera captured the breakthrough scientists had been waiting for. A baby indigo, wild-born, not one of the released adults. This tiny snake, barely a foot long, carried the unmistakable iridescent sheen of its parents. The emperor had returned, breeding in the wild, establishing a foothold for the species. Now comes the ultimate question. What happens when the indigo encounters the Burmese python? The math is daunting. A full-grown indigo cannot consume a 15-foot python, but it can patrol the forest, hunt juvenile pythons, and reduce their numbers before they reach breeding size. This daily, relentless predation could act as a biological firewall, a defensive line protecting North Florida from the invasion spreading up from the south. It is a gamble, an audacious, massive biological gamble with an entire ecosystem at stake. But just as hope began to bloom around the indigo program, leaked footage from Big Cypress National Preserve revealed that the native resistance wasn't just coming from the labs or breeding programs. It was already alive in the swamp itself, in ways that no one had anticipated. The fight for the Everglades was far from over, and the true battle had only just begun: the Bobcat Rebellion. Deep in Big Cypress, researchers had been monitoring a python nest. A massive female, probably 15 feet long, was coiled around her eggs in the classic brooding posture.
She arranges her eggs in a pile and coils around them tightly. Of all the snakes in the world, the African rock python is one of only a few that actually cares for its young.
The plan was to wait for the right moment to capture her and destroy the clutch before another 100 snakes could hatch into the swamp. But a trail camera recorded something that nobody was expecting. A bobcat walked into the frame. Now, under normal circumstances, a bobcat avoids a python. It is a weight class mismatch. A 25-pound cat against a snake that can weigh over 100 pounds and strike faster than the eye can follow. The smart money says the bobcat loses that fight every time. But this particular cat, a male with the lean, hungry look of a survivor, did not back down. He did not run. He started stalking the nest. The footage shows him circling, evaluating, waiting for his moment. The female python was sluggish, perhaps in the middle of shedding, perhaps exhausted from the metabolic demands of egg guarding. And the bobcat noticed. He moved in. What the camera captured next was a masterclass in predatory combat. The cat swatted at the snake, drawing strikes that he dodged with reflexes that made the python look like it was moving in slow motion. He darted in, raked claws across scales, retreated before the snake could coil around him. It was not a fight so much as a harassment campaign, wearing down an opponent that outweighed him by a factor of 4 through sheer speed and aggression. But the real shocker was not the fight itself. It was what happened afterward. The bobcat did not just destroy the eggs, he started eating them. Protein is protein, and a clutch of python eggs represents a significant caloric windfall. But more importantly, footage from other areas started showing bobcats engaging in behavior that suggested something deeper was happening. They were taking down pythons and caching the carcasses. Caching is when a cat covers its kill with leaves and debris to save it for later. This is high-level predatory behavior. It means the bobcats are not just reacting defensively to pythons they happen to encounter. They are actively recognizing these invaders as a food source. They are hunting them. They are learning. Scientists have a term for what is happening. They call it biotic resistance. When an invasive species enters a new ecosystem, native predators usually do not know how to deal with it. The invader has an advantage precisely because nothing recognizes it as either threat or prey. But given enough time, sometimes decades, sometimes centuries, native species start to adapt. They learn new hunting techniques. They adjust their behavior. They incorporate the invader into the existing food web. That process is happening right now in the Everglades. The bobcats are targeting python nests. Alligators are ambushing smaller snakes in the water, grabbing them from below the surface where the pythons cannot use their constricting coils. There are even reports of Florida panthers, the rarest big cat in North America, taking down pythons in direct confrontations. The swamp is waking up. The footage of that bobcat standing over a defeated python, timestamp glowing in the corner of the frame, is the most hopeful thing to emerge from the Everglades in 20 years. It proves that this ecosystem is not just a passive victim waiting to be consumed. It is a fighter. Life is adapting, learning, pushing back against the invasion in ways that nobody predicted. The war for the swamp. Let us be clear about where things stand. A few brave bobcats cannot eat 300,000 snakes. The parasites are still spreading north, infecting native snake populations that have no immunity. The indigo snake program is promising, but still in its infancy, with only a handful of breeding animals establishing themselves in the wild. The war is far from over. We are standing at a crossroads in the Everglades, and the paths forward could not be more different. To the south lies a biological dead zone, acres of swamp where the silence is deafening, where the trail cameras capture nothing but empty frames, where an ecosystem that took millions of years to evolve has been effectively sterilized in less than 3 decades. That is what happens when the invasion wins. To the north, A desperate line of defense is forming. Reintroduced indigo snakes patrolling the forest floor, adapting bobcats learning to target python nests. Alligators and panthers incorporate a new prey item into their ancient hunting routines. State and federal agencies coordinating the largest invasive species response in American history. That is what resistance looks like. The footage tells us one thing for certain. Nature finds a way, but nature's way is violent, messy, and completely unpredictable. There are no guarantees that the resistance will succeed. There are no assurances that the indigos will spread fast enough to make a difference. The lungworm plague continues to advance, killing native snakes in areas that have never even seen a python. What we are watching is evolution in real time. Predators and prey adapting to new pressures, developing new behaviors, either surviving or going extinct based on how quickly they can learn. The Everglades has become a laboratory for the kind of ecological upheaval that climate change and globalization are bringing to ecosystems all over the planet. What happens here will tell us something important about whether nature can adapt fast enough to survive the age of human-caused disruption. The Florida you thought you knew is already gone. The swamp of your imagination, teeming with raccoons and rabbits and the sounds of nighttime life, has been replaced by something stranger and more uncertain. The new Everglades is a battlefield where ancient predators are learning new tricks, where introduced emperors are reclaiming lost territory, where invisible parasites are spreading through food webs that have no defense against them, and the creatures fighting for survival are evolving right before our eyes. Beneath the murky waters of the Everglades, a silent war is unfolding, one that no one saw coming. Dead snakes untouched by predators are only the beginning. What invisible force is spreading faster than the invaders themselves? What ancient threat has returned to fight back against a collapsing ecosystem? This isn't just a story of pythons and parasites. It's a high-stakes battle for survival, where native predators are adapting in real time, and a long-lost emperor may rise from extinction to reclaim its throne. Every shadow could hide life or death. Every movement in the reeds could tip the balance. Tonight, we dive into a hidden war beneath America's greatest wetland, where every discovery challenges what we think we know about nature, survival, and the fight to preserve a world on the brink.